Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to you guys. And again, another hello for those who joined us for the first time today. I would like you to welcome Professor George Yip. He's a distinguished visiting professor in international business strategies. He's a distinguished faculty fellow at the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University. His research interests focus on frontiers issues for managers, especially in international business. His current main focus is the rise of innovation in China and how both Chinese and foreign companies can manage that phenomenon. Another current focus is global account management by multinational companies. Prior to Northeastern, he worked as Professor and Associate Dean of Executive MBA at Imperial College, London, Professor and Associate Dean of MBA at London School of Business, Professor of Strategy and Co-Director of the Center on China Innovation at China Europe International Business School, Dean of Rotterdam School of Management. He also taught at several leading universities such as Harvard, Georgetown, UCLA, Stanford, and Oxford. Professor Yip is also the author of various acclaimed books written for both managers and academics. Among his current appointments, serving on a number of corporate and advisory boards, including the Institute for Development Markets, Gemini Consulting at UK, and American University of Cairo School of Business, Porto Business School at Portugal. Also, I would like to welcome our honorary guest, Dr. Amani. I'm sorry, I have to do this. Dr. Amani Borosli. She's a professor of finance at CBA, Kuwait University. She's the ex-Minister of Commerce and the ex-Minister of Planning and Development. Also a board member of Emaar Holding Company and the financial advisor for Kuwait Airways and the head of scientific committee at GCC Government Conference. So I will give the podium to you, George.
Okay. Can you see, I need to get back to the screen sharing. Can you see the visuals?
Actually,
yes,
we do see the screen.
You do see the screen.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't see it myself. Sorry.
What we see the content of your folders, including one presentation that is titled Kuwait Practitioner Journal, which is the second document.
I know. This is what I can't. Sorry, this is what I cannot see.
Okay.
All I'm seeing is the video of the two of you.
Correct. So what you should see is one of the choices presented to you by Microsoft Teams.
I'm going to try sharing again.
Well, I asked everyone to turn on their cameras, please, George.
Okay, how about that?
Yes, that's good. That's good, George. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's very good.
You can see it. All right.
Yeah.
Apologies, everybody. All right, let's start. So in contrast to the session earlier this week, which was publishing in academic journals, this is practitioner journals. So academic journals are read by academics and practitioner journals are read by managers. So just as background, here's my relevant experience. I've published 9 articles in the top 3 practitioner journals: California Management Review, Harvard Business Review, and Sloan Management Review. And I've also got articles in nearly all the other practitioner journals. I've got best-selling trade books in 11 languages. Trade books are the term for books for managers. And over 100,000 copies. I've over 11,000 citations in Google Scholar. I mention this because half the citations are for articles from practitioner journals. So you can get citations from articles in that, and also citations from books. I'm on the editorial advisory boards of California Management Review and Sloan. And I mention American University of Cairo just to show that I have some background in the Middle East and understand some of the challenges you have in conducting research in your region. And I'm currently chair of the research advisory committee of one of the top business schools in France. Whoops, sorry, wrong way. So these are some of my books, and you'll get PDFs, the PDF of my presentation. So what's the use of practitioner articles? is to disseminate your research, because managers do not read academic journals. So you need to be aware of that. It contributes to rankings. For example, the Financial Times ranking counts both Harvard Business Review and Sloan Management Review toward their, I think it's the list of 45 journals. Very good use in classes. I never use academic articles for my MBA classes because they're not written for MBAs. I assign practitioner journal articles. It's to build your own credibility for consulting. It's very good for promoting executive education, because again, this is what executives can read. It really improves your own thinking, because you can do an academic article, and once you start trying to write a managerial article related to it, it changes your thinking. And it can be the forerunner to a managerial book. So really my most important managerial book, Total Global Strategy, I started with an article in Sloan Management Review, which pretty much provided the structure for the entire book. And then, as I like to say, the book wrote itself after that. You can indeed get academic citations, and practitioner articles and books get you media exposure. So just think, sorry, this keeps clicking the wrong way. An example, so I've been on BBC, CNBC, I've given talks at Google, and recently a Fortune magazine conference in China. If you can use chat, and I'll look at this later on, use the chat function to say whether you've ever submitted to or published in a practitioner journal and which one, and summarize an idea you may have for a practitioner journal. So when we get to the question and answer session, I'll look at the chat and see what you've written. So you can do this while I'm speaking. So why does the field of business have separate journals for practitioners? You see, in business, it's a unique challenge faced by business schools compared with other academic fields, that research and practice are very different. As business academics, we are external, indirect observers of business. In contrast, say a medical academic does research on the same human bodies on which doctors practice, so there isn't this disconnect. A legal academic uses the same legal materials as does a practicing lawyer. And an engineering academic, researchers say the same bridge structure as may be built by a practicing engineer. So business academics have a much bigger disconnect with their field than these other professional academic subjects. And most academic articles are what I call about the frontier of theory, but managers want to read about the frontier of practice. And continuing, practitioners actually want something different from research. Most academic output is tested hypotheses with probabilistic predictions about the mean. Well, managers are not actually particularly interested in the mean. For many subjects, especially strategy, managers deal with more variables than observations. So they're far more, so you can't do hypothesis testing on that. They're far more interested in pattern recognition, such as, does this configuration of external circumstances mesh with my particular configuration of strategies and actions to produce a successful outcome for my company? So they want to read articles that help them do pattern recognition to figure out whether it fits for their company. Also, business practitioners are interested in studies with a different methodology. Managers prefer in-depth case studies, again, where there are more variables than observations, rather than large sample statistical studies with many more observations than variables. Practitioners want to test the hypothesis on their own situation. Now, I've sometimes had colleagues say, well, I'm studying a business subject, so it must be relevant. But relevance does not come from the subject matter, because you can study a subject such as strategy in a very theoretical way. Relevance if it's usable by practitioners. So this really leads to a challenging requirement that business academics have to conduct research with two different types of methodology, because it is not just a case of translating quotes, and I hate that term, translating, academic research for a managerial audience. And I have a wonderful example of this. I was lucky enough to be Michael Porter's second doctoral student. Michael Porter, as many of you may know, is probably the most famous business academic. His competitive strategy work. He did his PhD at Harvard Economics in a joint business economics degree with the business school, based on industrial organization theory. And his work was large sample about the retail industry. But that did not produce anything usable by managers. So to convert it, he actually spent 4 years writing case studies about companies. And I wrote one of those case studies, so I know exactly what he did to convert it into his framework for competitive strategy. So that was his second methodology. The first methodology was large sample hypothesis testing, but his second methodology was to write case studies. I mean, that's only one methodology, but that's a very important one that is different, and that is what managerial audiences need. So as I said, academic research is the frontiers of theory, and practitioner research is the frontiers of practice. This symbol here actually is from Star Trek, boldly going where no academic has gone before. So what are the key practitioner journals? By far the top one is Harvard Business Review, which is the most practical. MIT Sloan Management Review, which is somewhat more academic, and California Management Review, which is the most academic of the three, and it's published by University of California system, especially Berkeley. Then there's also London Business School Review, but you really need a London Business School co-author only, and those are very practical articles. Business Horizons, also very practical, University of Indiana. And a good opportunity for all of us is a brand new multi-school, something like 20 top schools called Management and Business Review, and I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. And then there are a couple of important consultancy-based ones. McKinsey Quarterly is very prestigious, has very wide reach with practitioners. And then Strategy and Business, also quite a wide reach. Formerly Booz, the consulting company, and is now PricewaterhouseCoopers. Something about Management and Business Review, it is just launched. It's co-sponsored by 10 top business schools, aimed at scholars to publish their research insights for practitioners, for executives, readable summaries of latest research ideas, and also useful for academia. It's got a very eminent editorial board, 182 advisors. I'm one of the advisors, 29 department editors, and they have an interesting distribution plan. Last of all, sorry, I keep doing this. I recommend that your school could start its own journal. This is what I did when I was Dean of Rotterdam School of Management. And this is just for your own faculty to be able to disseminate ideas to managers. You won't get any credit like publishing in Academy of Management Journal or Harvard Business Review, but it's a way of getting your ideas out, and it's tremendously useful for the school, because what we did was that we would email this to all our alumni and contacts and give physical copies to important contacts such as the advisory board and executive education participants. So this has been going on now as a quarterly for 10 years since I launched it. And the way we do it is that it's a format of 2 to 4 pages rewritten by a professional writer in collaboration by the authors. And the authors also learn how to do this. And you see in the second bullet point, I have the word selected in red, because certainly not all academic articles are suitable for conversion into something that managers will understand. And it's an interesting test to see whether they can. I just downloaded the latest issue, which happens to focus on data analytics. So I really recommend that you start this at your own business school, at your own college, because there are no problems with outside reviewers. You can have an internal review process, but it's a great way to get started in that. Now, the guide to writing, you have to write in a narrative style, tell a story, use the active voice, not passive. Involve the reader in your story. Don't talk about what you did, focus on the problem. I mean, the classic sequence is, here's a business problem, here's our proposed solution for it. And, by the way, we did some research, but that tends to be in an appendix. Talk about what is going on. Don't rely on other people's research. Give your own opinions. But very important, it must be your own words. You can't plagiarize from other studies. It has to be your own study. Talk about what you believe the reader should do and how he or she should do it. Give them guidelines. And usually they want very few references as endnotes. None or very few for Harvard Business Review, although California Management Review is happy to have many endnotes, because interestingly, CMR is reviewed by academics who tend to look at it from a rather academic viewpoint. And as the editor of CMR said to me, his challenge is getting the paper past the academics in the first place, academic reviewers, and then he can look at the managerial relevance. And if any methodology is an appendix and no hypotheses, presents a simple, powerful idea, alter their thinking, may include a model, not an academic model, but a model like a 2x2 of what to do, implementation guidelines, and you can check out all of these, and ends with a powerful wrap up and closing. And I like the comment here, keeps them up at night. Now, last year at the Academy of Management conference, I organized a panel where I had senior editors speaking from Harvard Business Review, Sloan, and California Management Review, an eminent professor and myself as well. So here are the slides from, sorry, I'm using the PDF because of the technical problem. Right. Here are the slides from the Harvard Business Review editor, Sarah Cliff, from August last year. And I'll go through some of these. So the mission of Harvard Business Review to improve the practice of management. And again, you can study these at your leisure when you get the PDFs. Many people may not know this now, but HBR is now multi-platform. There's digital, there's the magazine, and there's the books. It's affiliated with a business school, but it's editorially independent, and it's written by academics, consultants, and practitioners. Huge outreach, 290,000 subscribers, and their website is visited by 6 to 8 million unique users every month. What topics? So strategy, innovation, leadership, managing people, organization culture, functional management such as marketing, HR, finance, but notice it's functional management. I see that many of you are in quantitative methods. Sadly, they don't do articles on quantitative methods. And sometimes there's an emphasis based on what's happening in the external environment. Sometimes there's a sector coverage such as healthcare or technology giants, economics, business, and society. Sometimes they focus on countries, particularly China, occasionally, non-profit social enterprise, but most of the articles are in the upper half of this visual. And the editors ask themselves, did I learn anything? Are the insights new or surprising? It's a very tough hurdle to get through this. Is it really new? Does it go against conventional wisdom? And one of the other speakers, Rita McGann of Columbia University, has a 5 smart people test. Would 5 smart people find this interesting and learn something? Does it tackle an important problem? Is it something real? Are the stories fresh and interesting? So they really want, interesting stories, particularly from interviews with top executives. And are the authors credible? They have a whole proposal that you can use if you want to do that. You can download a proposal template. The long form, the full articles, must have a point of view, not the research in itself, evidence and stories. And the trade-offs they wrestle with, what do they give space to? Cutting edge ideas versus practical help on evergreen continuing problems, making the authors happy versus making the readers happy. And by the way, they do a lot of editing. Although I'm working with them now on something where the editing is lighter than my previous piece. And tried and true authors versus new voices, narrow and deep versus broad and general interest, Harvard Business School versus everybody else, how can companies perform better versus saving the world, and the developed world versus the emerging world. HBR.org does excellent short articles on research studies published in journals. So it's a great place to learn to work with them. It's easier and it's less time consuming than long form. Also, if you do get a piece into .org, it actually looks just like an article. You get a PDF, which you can use in your classes and send to your contacts. And if it gets a lot of hits, the review may even then decide to ask you to write a full article for the printed version, or you might use it as the basis for a book. So the magazine, the front of the book is some general research coverage. Middle of the book are the long form articles. And the back of the book are some managing yourself and some case studies. The press, Harvard Business School Press, which publishes books, general management ideas, a small number of high quality titles. Again, if you can get into Harvard Business School Press, that is tremendous because they have very good promotion of the books. For the web, you submit an idea to the editor pitches the idea to top editors, and so on. The standard kind of process. And next week, you'll have a session on the entire reviewing and editing process, which is all done by academics for academic journals, and is rather different for the practitioner journals, where the non-academic editors are much more important. So for Harvard Business Review, Sloan, they have non-academic editors, although California Management Review, the senior editor, is actually an academic. So there's a lengthy editing process. I won't go through this in detail. You can read about this. There's a lot of back and forth in bullet 3 between the primary editor and the author. And when you pitch an idea, keep these questions in mind. If you were telling me the dinner party test, what would the headline be, or sometimes called the elevator pitch? Which bits of these do people in executive education classes get excited about? Why do you love the topic? And so on. And I think that's the key thing. I'm now going to remove my visuals so that I can look at the chat and we can move on to, we'll go back to, right. Thank you all. So we can have the questions now. And any chat.
George, would you like to close your presentation or keep it on for visual?
Is it blocking? I'll stop sharing. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's up to you.
No, I'll stop sharing. Okay.
So I would love to ask my colleagues, attendees, if they have any question or any idea of chatting with Dr. George. They can write down on the chatting box.
Or they can speak up.
I think there is a.
Yes, Dr. Mohammed. I'm not sure. Should I go ahead and type, or can I speak up?
You can speak up.
Okay, amazing. Well, first, thank you so much, Professor George, for this very interesting and very relevant topic. My name is Mishari Al-Nahed. I'm an assistant professor of strategy and entrepreneurship. So I'm fairly interested in a practitioner-targeted type of papers. So I've been following HBR for a while. And I've got a question regarding finding a suitable topic that is relevant to the region here. I mean, if you look at the type of articles that are published in the practitioner journals, they're either theoretically driven or phenomena data driven, or they're context or geographic regional driven. So for me, I think, and I think for many of us here at Kuwait University, being part of an emerging market here in the Middle East, we think there are some insights. So if you look at a regular, typical, well-established research relationship between two variables, I think the moderator here would be the region. But at the same time, there has to be some novelty. Speaking about something that is quite regular, quite different, could most likely bring the aha moment or the aha insight that a CEO can read, for example, in China. But I'm quite struggling in there. So where do these ideas come from? And how can I evaluate whether the idea that I'm writing about or a story that is targeted towards practitioner versus original research paper? I'm not sure if I was able to communicate my question clearly, but
I understand the question.
Yes.
And the challenge. I recently downloaded a couple of articles in McKinsey Quarterly about what's different about strategy in Africa, because one of my sessions is about Africa. There's now a lot of interest in Africa, and I recommend actually you go to McKinsey Quarterly and look at some of their Africa articles, because they're a very good example of how you can be very region specific and say what's different about my region. So you could do the same for the Middle East. I think what a practitioner journal would be interested in is, of course, something that covers the entire Middle East region, you know, all the way from Morocco to the Gulf. And if you can find some things to say there, in fact, I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, I've had some experience in the Middle East. The challenge, of course, is that despite the fact you've got the same language and the same culture, you've got huge barriers between countries, you know, institutional barriers, etc. And so a multinational company looking at the region sometimes says, you know, it's very hard to have a regional strategy for the Middle East, unlike, say, for the European Union. So that would be a promising kind of article. We can say, here are the elements that you could have a pan-regional, you know, Arab bloc, whatever you want to call your region, strategy. So, or you could be more narrower, which is, you know, marketing in this region, or innovation in this region. I mean, I can't do this for you, but you have to do it for yourself. But I do recommend looking at those Africa articles, because they're very good and they go into quite a lot of depth. On the other hand, the advantage of Africa at the moment is that the West is a lot more ignorant about Africa than it is about the Middle East. So be careful you're not trying to say something that people already know about. Similarly, you know, the West is fascinated by China because it suddenly becomes so successful and important and is a threat. So the practitioner journals every now and then publish something about China. So like I've had 2 articles in Sloan Management Review about innovation in China, because that's a very important new topic in a very important country. So can you find something equivalent for your region? Does that help?
Yes, it does. But to that point, I think part of that challenge is the fact that we're academic researchers. And some of the best articles I've read about the Middle East and HBR were actually written by practitioners to practitioners. So founders and CEOs for some of the most successful organizations here in the Middle East were able to write a very interesting story about what they've done. And they actually have proprietary data about their company, which can add insight. On the other hand, for us, we're used to using our theoretical driven research, and we get in the midst of the rigor relevance debate. So it's sort of it's a new territory for us to play in. So,
well, that's exactly why I said you need a second methodology. You have to do some interviews, for example. That's the easiest second methodology. And you go and do the interviews. Because it's for a practitioner journal, you don't have to have rigor in the interviews. The interviews are more, you've already done the rigor in your academic research. If you take the same study and now going interview some executives in your region about that, you can now suddenly bring in the flavor, which is what managers need. All right. So it doesn't have to be we interviewed 100 people and ran some statistics on it. So I really do recommend that Kuwait University launches this internal journal, and that would be a test of whether you even have something to say to managers.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. Truly appreciate it.
And that internal journal costs almost nothing. It's like the annual salary of 50% of a professional writer or something like that. And then the very minor production costs. Or if the university doesn't even do that, for your own classes, you can write a 2 to 4 page managerial summary to use in your classes.
I would like to ask you for your help at a later stage that we can have our own, at least for CPA. So we need to discuss that thing later on. I mean, yeah, that was one of my questions, and you just answered me before even I asked of issuing our own. But anyway, I'll keep things to, if anyone have another question.
Well, AA has a question, his hand is raised.
Yes,
Ali
yes.
Al-Kathain.
Ali, yes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes, yes.
First of all, thank you for your informative presentation. And my question out of curiosity, how do you balance between your research duties and your teaching duties? And how many teaching load you have per semester? And do you teach graduate level courses or undergrad? And how many TAs you have and what are their qualifications? Thank you.
Well, this question, of course, it depends on the school. And I've been at many, many schools. So I can answer, let me answer this question broadly. And in fact, I've actually advised schools like Cairo and the French school and Portuguese school about this balance. So basically, the higher rank the school, the higher the percentage of time for research and the lower for teaching. So like London Business School, where I was, I would say that most of the faculty spent 50% of their time on research and about 30% of time on all aspects of teaching. Now, as you move to schools that are more teaching oriented, this steadily increases. At Rotterdam School of Management, which has the most explicit structure I've ever seen, they actually said, if you don't keep up a certain research output level, measured average over every 4 years or something like that, we increase your teaching load. And one of the things that I've been trying to implement at the schools I advise is that you reward the successful researchers by giving them more time for research. And this is quite difficult for the administration to do because faculty complain, but I recommend that your school puts in a system where those who've already demonstrated some research success are given more time, and those who are not doing research are given more teaching to make up for that, because you've only got one pool of people. And then, of course, many schools use full-time teachers who are adjuncts or teaching fellows, etc. Research assistants varies from school to school in terms of how much money they have. Obviously, good to get that through grants or directly through the school. And then teaching assistants, again, varies from school to school. So like in China, I was 5 years at the top business school in China. That was a very rich school. So I had a teaching assistant sitting in every class to make notes on what people said to help me with grading class participation. At Imperial College, we now have a teaching assistant for every online course and more for many of the face-to-face classes. So there is no straightforward answer. It depends on the budget and policies of the school. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. And hopefully, Dr. Zainal, you take these notes and pass it to the university management for future planning, inshallah. Thank you.
So one other piece of advice on research, that even though I always liked teaching, I've tried to teach in such a way to do it effectively, but to minimize my time and to minimize the time the students come and ask you questions, etc. So if you are successful in the classroom, they don't come and bother you outside the classroom. The less successful you're in the classroom, the more they want to see you in office hours, etc. So I was always trying to maximize my time for research.
Thank you so much.
Professor Yep, if I may ask you a question, it might be out of the context of this seminar. Do you have any advice on the online teaching examination procedure? I mean, we are going through this. I mean, we need to start doing something about it. So
yes,
with your experience for the online teaching thing, I know you have a good experience on that too.
Yes. I have good experience of this through Imperial College of online teaching. I've never been involved in online exams myself because I teach an elective that has no exams. But the central issue with online exams is invigilation. And I've been reading about this recently, and they're getting stricter and stricter, including the student allowing a camera to look around the entire room that the student is in. British universities are doing this now to check they don't have books open, to check that they're not looking at their mobile phones, etc. I'm afraid cheating is a big problem. And if you can't control that, then you are going to lose credibility. So there's a lot of information out there now on the web about how to invigilate online exams, but you absolutely have to pay attention to that.
Wouldn't that be a violation of their privacy once you have those cameras? And
well, I know somehow the UK is managing this, so the students accept it. I mean, there are some student complaints, of course, but it's the only way to do it.
Okay.
I mean, the other approach, of course, is that you go to, particularly in China, what schools do is that they go to a professional exam service where they go to a place. Now, of course, with COVID, it's no longer possible. You know, before COVID, they'd actually go to a place and be invigilated. But now we need online. We need, you know, online invigilation instead.
Thank you. So, any other question to Professor? Yep.
Dr. Mohammed, can I just have some comments maybe and question? Dr. Amani Bruce with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Dr. George, it's an honor to hear your speech today. And I think the concept of converting the academic articles into the practice world or the business world, it's a huge challenge. And in Kuwait specifically, maybe I have some experience in this aspect. Many articles have been published by many excellent professors in Kuwait University and other institutions. However, when we try to have the benefits of these articles in practice, we will not have a huge benefit in Kuwait. And this is specifically because of the lack of understanding, because the academic terminologies and ideas cannot be understood by the public. So I think Kuwait University should have the initiative, and I strongly agree with your recommendation of having Kuwait University starting this journal. And Dr. Mohammed, maybe you should take this forward. This is an excellent idea. Most of the companies, they don't have the academic or the practitioner, this small chain, between the academic and the practitioner. It's not filled in Kuwait. So I think we should do that. Like, for example, now there is a call from CAFAS to most of the professors in Kuwait University and other institutions to write their ideas and their initiatives about, the impact of the outbreak of the COVID-19 and its impact on the private sector and the public sector and policies. And maybe this is where we should start. Kuwait University should have also an initiative to start from this maybe idea and then take it forward. Thank you.
Yeah, so for example, on COVID, you could use this as a trigger for the first issue. You could have a special issue on COVID and management. And as I said before, this is really inexpensive thing to do because you're just creating PDFs you're creating a PDF online and keep it short. I first had the insight for this because my previous job before I was Dean of Rotterdam School of Management, I was Vice President of Research and Innovation at Capgemini Consulting, a very big consulting company. And we produced something very similar. And I remember and I traveled quite a bit. I remember one day I was about to go on a flight and I looked at my desk. And on my desk was Harvard Business Review, Sloan Management Review, Academy of Management Journal. These are thick publications. I thought, I really don't want to carry these in my briefcase. But I also had this very thin thing from Capgemini Consulting, which is about 12, 14 pages. I thought, I'll put that in my briefcase and I'll read it all on the flight. So this is the reaction you want to do. Don't create something thick. you create something thick, people are not going to put it in their briefcase, or they're not going to read it online. So keep it short also.
George?
Yeah?
Would you please share your camera so it's better they can see you like live?
Share my camera? I thought it is on.
No, it's not.
That's very strange.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I mean...
No, that's fine. But, you know, according over here, it's on. I don't know why that is. Switch.
It shows something, but it's like...
What does it show?
A blurry image of something blue and...
Right, your camera is unfocused. It's not
space,
focusing on you, George.
All right, let me try something else.
Yeah. It's still unfocused. It's still
Yeah, sorry. Let me. You mean they've never been able to see me?
No.
Oh, you should have told
You
me.
were off camera.
What about that? Can you see me now?
No, it's the same angle of the camera.
I think you're using a different camera. Maybe you're having two cameras.
It was the same camera as when we had the pre-meeting.
So anyway, so keep going then. I mean, we'll just... Yeah.
There you are. There you are. Now we see you.
No, this is a different camera. It's not as...
Yeah,
not
but
as
we can
good.
see you
So
now.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you while you were answering the...
Yes, doctor, we can see you now. We
Okay.
can see you.
Thanks.
So you were answering Dr. Amani's question?
Yes, actually, I think I finished that answer about COVID.
Okay. So any other question? So I think that's it then. George? Yeah, I think, we're done with the question in this case. So I thank you for your time and the amount of knowledge that we received today. And I guarantee you that I'm going to contact you soon to work on that initiative of having something. Well, I think we lost you again with the mic. If you just enable.
Yeah, happy to help you with that. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
And I thank everyone who joined us today. And see you on Monday on the 8th for a different session. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, I think it was successful, and hopefully your faculty will learn quite a bit from this presentation. And I'm looking forward to our next lecture.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.